MTG becomes a lib. I mean, that's what happened this year. She got a little bit out of shape because the president wouldn't support her for a statewide office in Georgia, which she was going to lose if she had gotten into it, by the way. And so she goes off the deep end.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is obviously on the right, and the rest of these people are utter frauds.
Hello, folks, and welcome back. Buckle up. We're diving headfirst into the political circus. And today, we've got a real barn burner. Donald Trump calling Marjorie Taylor Greene a traitor, again, after she dared to expose his alleged Epstein cover-up. This isn't just political drama. This is a full-blown Shakespearean tragedy mixed with a reality TV show. And we're here to dissect every single ridiculous, hypocritical, and downright infuriating moment. You think you know what's going on? Trust me, it's wilder than you imagine. Let's roll the tape and we will go through it bit by bit.
In an explosive profile in the New York Times about Marjorie Taylor Greene, she kind of uncovers why she and Donald Trump had the falling out that they've had. And it's a pretty vicious one at that. She says that things really came to a head after the pressure to release the Epstein files came between herself and Donald Trump. Greene says that it was Epstein. Epstein was everything. So that's what she says in this interview with the New York Times. And that Trump was livid that she held a press conference with some of Epstein's victims and that she threatened to expose some of the other men who were alleged to have abused these girls. So when she urged Trump to invite some of Epstein's female victims to the Oval Office, she says, he angrily informed her that they had done nothing to merit the honor.
Hold on a second. Did you just hear that? Trump, the self-proclaimed champion of the forgotten man and woman, the guy who can't stop talking about draining the swamp, apparently told Epstein's victims they hadn't done anything to merit the honor of an Oval Office visit. I said that slow because I'm very shocked by this. Let's unpack that for a second. The Oval Office, folks, is supposed to be the people's house. It's where the President of the United States, the leader of the free world, should show empathy, compassion, and a willingness to hear from anyone who has suffered injustice. But no, not for these women, not for the victims of one of the most heinous sex trafficking rings in modern history. According to Trump, they just don't make the cut. Meanwhile, this is the same guy who practically got a revolving door for lobbyists, corporate bigwigs, and foreign dignitaries who with deep pockets. People who definitely merit the honor because, well, they get something to offer him. They have something to give him, specifically him. It's not about merit. It's about convenience and optics. This isn't just a misstep. It's a glaring, flashing red light. It shows you exactly where priorities lie. It's a slap in the face to anyone who believes in justice, accountability, and the idea that the most powerful office in the world, the President of the United States, should stand up for the most vulnerable. It's like saying, sure, I care about the little guy, but only if the little guy can get me a photo op or a campaign donation. And let's not forget the sheer hypocrisy of it all. This is the same president who, as the clip mentions, had no problem hiding endless press conferences with literal war criminals. Example, Benjamin Netanyahu. A war criminal gets a red carpet, but victims of child sex trafficking are told to pound sand. This boggles my mind. It's a moral compass spinning wildly out of control. And this doesn't matter if you are Republican or Democrat. This is about basic human decency. That's it.
I mean, the guy who can't stop himself from holding endless press conferences with literal war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu thinks that Epstein's victims didn't do anything to earn a visit to the Oval Office. Got it. Okay. It would be the last conversation Greene and Trump would ever have. Now, he dubbed her Marjorie Taylor Greene, as we all know. And a day later, she actually received a death threat against her college-aged son with Trump's new nickname for her in the email subject line. Greene promptly texted that information to the president. According to a source familiar with the exchange, his long reply made no mention of her son. Instead, Trump insulted her in personal terms when she replied that children should remain off limits from their disagreements. Trump responded that she only had herself to blame because he's an unbearable prick, and you should expect him to have a pathetic response like that. Finally, Greene was very upfront about her own shortcomings during this interview with Robert Draper in the New York Times. He asked her, was there ever a point before 2025 where you thought, you know what, Trump acts like a man of the people and he talks about the forgotten men and women of this country, but I'm not so sure. She says, I was just so naive and outside of politics, Greene said with a wince of a smile, that it was easy for me to naively believe. And I relate to that. I definitely, when I was 100% partisan brained, I was naive enough to think that the Democratic Party would somehow be better than the Republicans on the big issues that matter the most, right? Issues of war, issues of the economy, issues related to Israel, for example. But tens of thousands of innocent people were slaughtered under Biden's watch, and there were never any brakes on that car. So I feel her when she says that. Cenk, what about you?
Yeah, so there's a ton of things that we disagree with Marjorie Taylor Greene on, and now a couple of things we agree on, and I'm glad to have the agreement. But that's not the point. The point is who's being honest with you and who isn't. So I'd rather have an honest person in politics or media that I disagree with more than a dishonest actor, because that dishonest actor who's pretending to agree with me isn't going to do anything they said anyway, right? So that's not to say that, oh, I prefer Marjorie Taylor Greene to a Democrat. I prefer Marjorie Taylor Greene to the other corrupt Republicans who've been screwing us over our entire lifetimes. But what's happening with Marjorie Taylor Greene is really important, not because she's become any less right-wing. I think she's still way more right-wing than Scott Jennings or Mark Levin, et cetera, right? So I think that she's beginning to realize, oh, our own side lies to us, and they don't actually represent our positions.
Boom, there it is. The red pill moment. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, is finally connecting the dots and realizing what many of us have known for a long time. Both sides of the establishment wings of both parties are lying to us. They don't represent our positions. They represent their positions, which are almost always aligned with corporate donors, lobbyists, and special interests. This is huge because for so long, the political discourse has been about us versus them, Republicans versus Democrats. But the real fight, the one that truly matters, is the people versus the uni-party establishment. It's the regular folks, whether they lean right or left, against the entrenched power structure that benefits from keeping us divided and distracted. Think about it. How many times have you heard a politician on your side make a promise only to see them do a complete 180 once they get into office? Or worse, just ignore the issue completely. It's not just incompetence, it's often a deliberate act. They tell you what you want to hear to get your vote, then they go back to Washington and serve their real masters, the ones who fund their campaigns and keep them in power. Marjorie Taylor Greene, for all her controversy active, is actually articulating a truth that resonates deeply with a lot of frustrated Americans. When she says our side lies to us, she's talking about the Scott Jennings and the Mark Levins of the world, the corporate media pundits who act as gatekeepers, trying to bully everyone into compliance. They want you to believe there's no disagreement within the party, that their establishment, neocon, Israel First agenda, is the party's agenda. But as the clip points out, on issues like the Epstein files or endless foreign wars or the bloated Pentagon budget, the America First wing and the establishments are loggerheads. The establishment wants to bury the Epstein files, protect their powerful friends, and keep the money flowing to the preferred causes, regardless of public opinion or justice. This isn't about whether you agree with MTG or on everything. It's about recognizing that the political game is rigged. It's about realizing that the people who claim to speak for the right or the left are often just puppets for a larger, more ridiculous agenda, or I should say, formal agenda. They're selling you a narrative, a brand, while quietly doing the bidding for their corporate overlords. It's all about money. Most of us know that. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene does too.
So who represents the right-wing positions more on Epstein files? Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tom Massey, who say release them, and we've always wanted them released, or Donald Trump, who says, oh, nobody did anything wrong. His Justice Department says there were no one else that they would prosecute. They didn't want to release the files. He called it a hoax, etc. Well, that's not a question. There's no question about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Massey definitely represent the right-wing position. But the media just goes, no. Levin says move on. He just said it the other day to Mike Johnson. Oh, nobody wants to hear these Epstein files. We need to move on for Israel. I mean, I didn't mean that. He didn't say for Israel, to be fair, right? And mainstream media goes, oh, absolutely. All the right wingers, the real America First right-wing position is give Israel $100 billion. Don't ask any questions about Epstein, on and on. They just lie right to your face. So the fact that it's not just her, so many voters on the right wing realize, oh, our politicians are also dirtbags. Thank you. And so, my God, if I can get more Democratic voters to realize our politicians that take corporate PAC money on the Democratic side are also dirtbags. Anna's right. Did they do anything about Israel? Nothing. They gave Israel even more money. Biden did that. He's like, congratulations on the genocide. Here's 20 billion more for your genocide. But I can go on and on. Did they do anything about the Pentagon's bloated budget? No, the Democrats didn't do anything about it. They don't do, all those corporate politicians never do anything about anything. And the job of people like Scott Jennings, who are pundits in mainstream media, is to lie to you en masse to get you to bow your head, not to the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, but to the uniparty that is pro-corporate, pro-donor, pro-foreign governments. So lastly, we're talking about coming to the White House, that the Epstein victims didn't deserve it. You know who came to the White House recently and many times? Miriam Adelson. How does she?
And terrorists. How
did she earn her way to the White House? Well, her and her late husband, Sheldon Adelson, as you've heard me say many times, gave over $300 million to Donald Trump's campaigns. And then when she was there, she patted him on the head and said, I'll give you 250 million more if you violate the Constitution and run for a third term because you're being such a good job of being my servant. And who's the traitor? He calls Marjorie Taylor Greene traitor. Do you know that the Adelsons flew out Jonathan Pollard on their private jet back to Israel? Jonathan Pollard was a literal traitor. This uniparty does not represent the right or the left. They represent the corrupt. Marjorie Taylor Greene is obviously on the right, and the rest of these people are utter frauds.
How does the kind of divide in MAGA, which is a relatively new phenomenon? I mean, there was always a little bit there, but I mean, I don't think, if I were to say what the most surprising story was, I would say Marjorie Taylor Greene becomes not just a Trump critic,
MTG becomes a lib. I mean, that's what happened this year.
Yeah.
She got a little bit out of shape because the president wouldn't support her for a statewide office in Georgia, which she was going to lose if she had gotten into it, by the way. And so she goes off the deep end.
Trump lackey and cable news commentator Scott Jennings took a major jab at Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene over the weekend, accusing her of becoming a lib in 2025. Now, his ridiculous attack comes amid a New York Times profile, a lengthy one at that, on Marjorie Taylor Greene, in which she admitted to being naive about her feelings toward Trump and what he claimed to want to accomplish as president, and even accused Trump of faking his Christianity. Cenk, before we get into the details, your 2 cents?
Yeah, I'm amused by these establishment guys pretending to be more conservative than America First. So that's hilarious. But Marjorie Taylor Greene struck back. We'll give you that as well. So get all the facts here.
Now, in regard to claims that she became a lib, she did respond to that, saying that, oh, look, I'm being lied about again by Bush neocon and Mitch McConnell consultant Scott Jennings. I have a 98% voting record with Trump, so I guess Scott is calling Trump liberal too. Scott Jennings is everything America First voted against. He just fools people with hot takes. I'd actually agree with that. Now, he's also in the business of kissing Trump's ass, regardless of what he does. And part of that job includes downplaying the civil war that's currently taking place within the right wing, within MAGA. So during his appearance on ABC, he claimed that the internal divisions between America First and the neocons, it's overblown. It's really overblown. Take a look.
Look, I don't think these divisions and all this fraying are as big a deal as some people make it out to be. Trump is still extraordinarily popular among Republicans. He's the strongest party boss in the modern era. And he can get his allies in Congress to do most anything he wants them to do, which is why I think in the coming year, they really ought to spend some time trying to codify, to Rick's point, his executive orders and some of the other initiatives that he's had, really try to make it stick.
But if you've been paying attention, the infighting on the right has been pretty significant. And it's exemplified in part by Robert Draper's explosive profile of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And in it, she breaks down the collapse of her relationship with President Donald Trump. For her, it really began with Charlie Kirk's assassination. I actually thought that portion of this profile on Marjorie Taylor Greene was enlightening, telling. It gave you more insight into her change of heart toward Trump. So at his memorial service, Erica Kirk said that she forgave her late husband's killer. And that message of forgiveness was followed by this.
He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry.
So I was surprised to see a few notable conservatives who really didn't like that statement. And it turns out Marjorie Taylor Greene happens to be one of them. She says, that was absolutely the worst statement, Greene wrote to me in a text message months after the memorial service. And the contrast between Erica Kirk and the president was clarifying, Marjorie Taylor Greene added, quote, it just shows where his heart is. And that's the difference with her having a sincere Christian faith and proves that he does not have any faith. And she also said that the incident made her realize that being one of Trump's most voracious attack dogs wasn't actually aligning with what she wants her values to be. She told a friend, after Charlie died, I realized that I'm part of this toxic culture. I really started looking at my faith. I wanted to be more like Christ. Our side has been trained by Donald Trump to never apologize and to never admit when you're wrong. You just keep pummeling your enemies no matter what. And as a Christian, I don't believe in doing that. I agree with Erica Kirk, who did the hardest thing possible and said it out loud. But their feud eventually came to a head over the Epstein files. I can get to those details in just a minute. Before I do, Cenk, any thoughts?
Yeah, one of our members on TYT.com, Nerd Ferguson, made a good point here. They asked Trump his favorite Bible verse, and he said, I kind of like them all. Yeah, that dude ain't a real Christian. So I read that to you for this fight they're having about real Christianity, but also because it affects who's real overall and who isn't. So Scott Jennings, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, all these guys will pretend that the establishment wing, the neocon wing, the Israel First wing of the party is the whole party. And guys, if you're a Republican, we feel your pain, because on the left, the same exact thing happens. Some pundits will go on all over mainstream media and they will say, no, there's no difference in the Democratic Party. So, well, whose opinion should we listen to? Only mine. Since there's no real disagreement, you should ignore the other side completely. And besides which, the president is on our side. That's what they said to us during the Biden era. Since the Biden is an establishment figure, he's always right, and he's the leader of the party. And among Democratic voters, he polls at over 80%. So everybody shut back down, and you're not allowed to complain that he hasn't delivered paid family leave, minimum wage, defunding Israel, etc. No, there's gigantic disagreements within both parties. So America First doesn't want to fund Israel anymore. The establishment wants to fund them endlessly. That's a giant disagreement. But the Scott Jennings of the world go, no, there is no disagreement. we're right, we're gonna give Israel everything, and the rest of you shut up. And that might, unfortunately, that's worked way too well on the left, but it doesn't work as well on the right. And you should be proud of that. So no, America First doesn't believe people like Scott Jennings. And look at the policies. On the policies, Marjorie Taylor Greene is definitely more America First than Scott Jennings or Mark Levin. But they want to ignore all that, and they just want to use mainstream media to bully everyone into compliance. I don't think it's going to work.
Scott Jennings is the guy who wants to make the Epstein files a partisan issue, when in reality, it's not a partisan issue at all. And Scott Jennings also happens to be the guy who's like obsessively supportive of Israel, regardless of what Israel is up to. He has nothing to say about Epstein's ties with Israel, Epstein's various strategic maneuvering with the strategic maneuvering he did with Israel, even dating back to like the literal contras that were funded by the Reagan administration. I mean, it's insane. He just thinks everything's a partisan issue. Republicans good, Democrats bad, when in reality, both sides pretty bad, both sides implicated in the Epstein files. So he's nothing more than a pathetic partisan shill, and a smug one at that. So conservatives on social media, X in particular, have been voicing their displeasure, their anger at the Trump administration and its failure to essentially carry out Trump's campaign promises. And as a result, they're thinking about fighting back by refusing to pay their taxes. Now, their frustrations extend beyond the failures of the federal government. They're upset with state governments as well. But this sort of disillusionment, and I should be clear, it's really a bipartisan issue. There are plenty of Democratic voters who are very upset with the way the Democratic Party has carried out its duties. And so there's one potential politician who might actually do something about it, which we're going to get to in just a minute. But before we do, let's first explain why conservatives are absolutely fed up and what they're saying on X. For one, they're outraged at the Minnesota fraud scandal, which alleges that billions in taxpayer dollars were stolen by Somali immigrants. So that has been a longstanding issue in the state of Minnesota. There have been dozens of convictions. There's a new round of allegations as a result of this Nick Shirley YouTuber who put out a viral video recently. And so those allegations need to be investigated. We can't just take what he claims at face value. One of the facilities that was featured in his video, by the way, proved to local media that they are operating just as they're supposed to. They provided security footage showing children there. Nonetheless, conservatives are outraged about that story, and right wingers are also furious that Trump hasn't followed through on his campaign promises. So one of the more vociferous critics of Trump's is Nick Fuentes, and his messaging has kind of taken off on the right. So here's what he takes jabs at Trump for. He says, Golden Age update, 325,000 deportations for 2025. Trump bombed Nigeria, bombed Venezuela, threatening to bomb Iran again. Fifth Netanyahu visit, Trump wins Israel prize. Epstein files redacted, YouTubers doing the FBI's job, $5 billion for refugee resettlement. Now, Savannah Hernandez, who's also a contributor and commentator for Turning Point USA, also went viral after she threatened to stop paying her taxes. She says, F it, I'm not paying taxes this year. And then when the IRS comes after me, I'll blow that up into a huge national story about how the government will destroy your life over a couple $1,000s. Meanwhile, the Pentagon just failed their 8th straight audit in a row. Somalis literally come to the US just to defraud us. I don't agree with this at all, by the way. No, Somalis don't just come to the US to defraud us. That's a blanket statement about all Somalis, and I think that's super unfair. But that's what she claims, that they come here to defraud us out of billions, and illegals are prioritized for Section 8 housing and welfare programs over Americans. I'm not paying for it anymore. Now, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene added some fuel to this fire, responding to the post saying that this is how angry Americans are, and rightfully so. With nearly $40 trillion in debt and Social Security becoming insolvent in 2033. Now imagine if millions of Americans did this. Meaning, imagine if millions of Americans withheld their taxes because of the neglect of our federal government. And look, I've actually floated this before, and Cenk's like, this is not a good thing to do. And I ultimately do agree with him because our taxes fund programs that are important. I mean, part of the reason why I think Democrats caved when it came to the whole government shutdown battle is because people were going to lose their SNAP benefits and people were going to go hungry. Families and children were going to go hungry. So while I totally agree that our government has totally failed the American people, I think that refusing to pay taxes would further damage whatever's left of the government that they do somewhat effectively. But I want to fight back too. So I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of tinker with this so it causes less damage to programs that actually work while actually punishing the politicians who, I don't know, make decent salaries paid for by American taxpayers, get government funded healthcare, which they deny to the American people, of course. How about we focus on ways to deny our members of Congress the benefits and the perks that they get to take advantage of as they take half of the year off and then they spend the rest of the time simply fundraising or engaging in theater during these like committee hearings. The Hodge twins say at this point, there is no reason to pay taxes anymore. Then you have Graham Allen. The whole country should stop paying taxes until the corruption ends. Hit them where it hurts. Demand accountability by taking away their money. So as 2025 comes to a close, let's actually take a minute to remember the very beginning of this year because things were very different. So Elon Musk's Doge initiative, for instance, was surrounded in controversy from the day it began. And then it eventually burned out and died with a whisper. But the idea of the program was popular even while Musk was making a mess of things. And that's because I think most Americans do feel that our resources are being squandered, wasted. Polls show mixed feelings about government cuts and Doge. So this is a New York Times graphic. They compiled a number of surveys to make this graph. And you can see that Americans were pretty sour on Doge and Musk's leadership, but a majority supported the concept of cutting government waste, which was Doge's alleged agenda. And even more felt that government is inefficient. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that Americans are like, why am I busting my ass, paying a ton in taxes? And it feels like I'm not really getting any representation in return. And I, generally speaking, agree with that. And there needs to be a way for like-minded Americans who are frustrated with our broken political system to work together and demand more. There needs to be, honestly, a purge in our government. There need to be deep reforms because the problem that we're seeing right now stems from the big underlying issue, right? And that underlying issue is that anyone can be bought. Like any politician can be bought.
Preach, preach. This is the absolute core of the problem, folks. Anyone can be bought. It's not just a cynical observation. It's the cold, hard, undeniable truth that underpins almost every single dysfunctional, frustrating, and infuriating aspect of our political system. Think about it. When you have a system where campaign donations are essentially legalized bribery, where lobbyists write legislation, and where politicians leave office to become millionaire consultants, what do you expect? You expect them to serve the highest bidder, not the public. It's not a bug in the system, it's a feature. Bribery is baked in. This isn't some conspiracy theory. It's how the game is played. Why do you think we can't get common sense reforms passed? Why do our politicians consistently vote against the interests of their constituents on issues like healthcare, infrastructure, or even basic financial transparency? Because they're not beholden to us. They're beholden to the corporations, the billionaires, and the foreign governments who line their pockets. It's like going to a restaurant where the chef only cooks what's the biggest tip to the biggest tipper wants, regardless of what's on the menu or what the other diners order. You might have ordered a steak, but if the guy at table 5 slips a check to the chef, guess what? you're getting caviar. Everybody's getting caviar. It's a system designed for corruption, not representation. And the consequences are catastrophic. When politicians are bought, our laws become commodities. Our national interests are sold off to the highest bidder. The Pentagon fails its 8th straight audit. Billions are stolen in fraud scandals. And Social Security is on the brink of gone, really. But nobody in power seems to care enough to actually fix it. Why? Because the current system benefits those who are doing the buying and selling. Period. Again, it's all about money.
And so when you live in a system where bribery is baked into the way politicians operate, they're gonna be corrupt. AC/DC said it best. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap, okay? And it happens every day.
And that's the bottom line, folks. This isn't just about Trump versus MTG. It's about a broken system where integrity is a foreign concept and special interests call the shots. If you're tired of being lied to, if you're sick of politicians who serve everyone but you, then it's time to demand better. Hit that like button. Share this video with everyone you know who's fed up. And subscribe to our channel for more unfiltered truth. Let's keep calling out the frauds and fighting for a government that actually works for the people. Until next time, stay vigilant.